I'ma drop more hits to make my stock go up, them hands go up. Hey, showtime. And they stay there, and they stay there, and they stay there.
It's The Drive on your local radio station. We are ESPN Blacksburg, and a good Thursday afternoon to all of you. My name is Paul Van Wagner. Nathan Brennan is roaming around the building right now doing busy work for us. Andrew
That's what we like to have him do and keep him distracted.
Exactly. Let's see. Yeah. So Jeremy. Oh, okay. All right. Does that get us to Maui? That's the question. If we stick Nathan in a small studio apartment with 15 cats to torment him, does that get us to Maui? That's the $1 million question right now. Andrew, I'm fingers crossed.
Anything.
I feel like we're reaching a point in the negotiations right now with Jeremy where potentially we may have something. You know what we have right now? We got a little of this.
Can't keep my hands to myself. No matter how hard I'm trying to.
Scott Nason.
I want
Scott.
all to myself.
Scott Nason.
Scott.
I love Scott. Like a love song, baby. When you're ready, come and get
Scott Nason.
Scott.
Scott Nason. Scott Nason. Scott Nason.
Absolutely, let's go.
Scott Nason joining us today. How are you, my friend?
A little chilly up here, Paul. Sweater weather in northern
What?
Michigan, but doing great. Ready to talk a lot of sports with you and your listeners. Glad to be on your show.
It's like July. Why are you? It's what in the man? I so don't miss that. All right, talking a little soccer. Obviously, the USA women victorious. The USA men end up losing. There's lots of talk out there about the equal pay thing. I guess let's start out with this. The women win, the men lose. I don't think anyone would be surprised at either of those two outcomes.
No, not at all, Paul. I mean, you look at the U.S. women going into the tournament. They were the favorites. They had a couple tough matches going through, but they won. You kind of knew once they got through England, they were going to have their way in the final. They did. They're the best team in the world again, and a lot of credit should be given to their play on the field and winning their second World Cup, and that credit is well-deserved. The men, you look at that match against Mexico, that was the most unfriendly home match for the U.S. you'll ever have, and I think 75,000 of those fans were rooting for Mexico. U.S. may have got 5,000, but they had chances early. They couldn't capitalize. Jose Altidore really should have put that ball in the 17th minute. They don't. Mexico wins. And we've seen this before with U.S. and Mexico and Team USA. And so, talking about the men getting to the final, I said they had to do that, but I really thought they needed to win this one. They didn't. But there's going to be other opportunities ahead in CONCACAF because a brand new competition is starting in the fall called the Nations League, which is going to be very influential on what happens with World Cup qualifying for 2022. Things a lot different as far as Team USA men and getting to the World Cup than it has been in the past.
Is the reason they're doing this because of the USA men? I feel like that's not the whole reason why they would make a change like this.
Well, CONCACAF has been trying to make changes to their qualifying format for quite some time, and this just came out yesterday as far as qualifying for the World Cup. Now, it's quite a bit different than it has been in the past. In the past, it's been the 35 nations that represent CONCACAF, and as you know, Paul, there's 6 of those nations in CONCACAF that aren't FIFA members. I know you can name these, but I'm just going for saving time's sake, Benin, Guadeloupe, St. Martin, French Guinea, Martinique, and Sint Maarten, of course, as you know, are CONCACAF members, but they are not FIFA members, so they don't count in this World Cup group. So in the past, it's been 35 nations going for 3 spots, possibly 4. And so how they've done it in the past is you start off with the very small countries taking on each other. Many of those that I didn't mention, like a Curacao taking on a St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so it goes through a couple rounds, and then finally the U.S., Mexico, and the bigger countries get involved in what they used to have as a semifinal round, meaning it would dwindle down to 12 teams, but you wouldn't bring the big 6 teams in until the end. Then it would get down to 6, or what's called the hexagonal.
Yes.
That's what the U.S. was in their last World Cup campaign, where they finished 5th, as you remember,
Yes.
and couldn't qualify. Well, what CONCACAF has done now has kind of almost made it 2 different tournaments. The hexagonal, or the 6 highest-ranked FIFA teams going into next summer, will automatically get back into that hexagonal. They won't have to go through any qualifying stages whatsoever, and the top 3 of those 6 teams will advance to the World Cup. Now, where does that leave the other 29 teams? Well, they're going to be basically performing at the same time, but in a separate group. They're going to go from 29 teams to 1.
Okay.
And that 1 team will take on the 4th place winner, or 4th place finisher of the hexagonal. Are you still with me, Paul?
I am. Yep.
Okay. Now their reasoning for this is CONCACAF's president believes that the smaller teams will get more of a chance to get in quality matches. And I mentioned the CONCACAF Nations League, which is starting in September. That's going to go a big part towards these rankings, because this and the Gold Cup, which we just saw, are the only tournaments where, besides friendly matches, that some of these countries can get, their ranking up. And where that really comes into play is if you're ranked 7th in CONCACAF, like Panama or Canada is right now, you are going to go in with that group of 29 teams and have to play a whole bunch of matches just to get to, possibly taking on the 4th place team in the hexagonal. It's very confusing, but in a nutshell, the U.S. is going to have less games to qualify for the World Cup, technically 10, whereas the finisher in this other 29 group may have to play 16, 18 matches. So I understand some of the reasoning from CONCACAF. You want some of these very small independent nations to maybe play more matches, but I don't know. There's parts of it I don't like either.
Yeah, it seems to be very convoluted, and I guess if it gets the U.S. into the World Cup, they're ranked 30th right now in the world, and I know that just off the top of my head. I didn't have to Google it by any stretch of the imagination. They're ranked 30th in the world. Does that seem like a little bit high of a ranking? I mean, you're not in the World Cup. You're not one of the teams that have qualified for that, or is that right about where they should be?
I think it's right where they should be, Paul, because these rankings take into account a lot of different things. It also takes into account the strength of schedule, if you will, in some of their friendly matches when they play the European squads. That helps. The 32 teams that make the World Cup usually aren't the 32 highest-ranked teams, because you're going to have teams from Africa and Asia that are ranked 50th or 60th that get through their campaign, and so I think that's a fair ranking, and so the U.S. is pretty much assured, especially with their Gold Cup result this past week, of being in that top 6. Right now it's Mexico, U.S., Costa Rica, Jamaica, Honduras, and El Salvador. So if the rankings started now, they won't start until next summer. Those would be the 6 teams that have the best chance to get in the World Cup, because the top 3 go, and the 4th place team has a chance as well.
Okay. All right. I got you. Currently underway, Tunisia is playing against Madagascar. Of course, Tunisia from northern Africa, a population of 11.5 million. And I don't know if you knew this or not, Scott, but one of their official languages is Beaver.
Yes, I did know that, actually, Paul. I did Google it. I do have to admit.
Yeah, I did too. These matches, these are the Africa Cup of Nations. This is similar to the CONCACAF Gold Cup, right? That's what's going on right now.
You are learning, Paul. I'm very impressed. Each continent has its own, championship. We saw the Copa America in South America, which was won by Brazil. The Gold Cup, which is CONCACAF, which we just saw, won by Mexico. You have the Asian Cup also going on, the African Cup of Nations, and then next year you'll have the Euro 2020. That's that and the Copa America are the 2 big ones, but. World Cup qualifying has already started, Paul. As you know, 6 teams. There's only been 6 nations that have already been eliminated from the World Cup. I know you can name them all, but for time's sake, I'm going to name right now. Right. Brunei. I know you're big friends with their Sultan over there.
Yes.
Macau, Laos, East Timor, Pakistan, and Bhutan. You
What-
will not see any of those nations in Qatar in 2022 because the World Cup qualifying has already started in Asia.
But West Timor is still in it.
I believe so, yes. I
Okay.
believe they survived in advance. Hey, advance and move on. That's what you do in the World Cup.
I like
Qualifying.
it. I like it. On the women's side, the U.S. with their dominant performance, you look at what they did. Really, I mean, maybe other than the match against England, where they had a I believe it was a 1-1 contest, and then the U.S. scored to make it 2-1, or maybe it was 2-0, and England scored to make it 2-1. Either way, really, that was the only close match that the women played in the entire tournament, where you kind of kept looking at it going, okay, just hang on. The rest of them, they kind of were able to coast. I mean, they didn't, but they were able to coast for the most part. Who or how do these other countries catch up to Team USA?
Well, I think these other countries are catching up somewhat. I mean, and England was the one team I thought had a chance along with Germany, and Germany got knocked out before they could play the United States. But you look at that England-U.S. game, that was a pretty even game. England makes a penalty kick. That goes to extra time. 90% of those kicks should be made, but, of course, during pressure situations, that's not always the case. So I think the gap is narrowing. I mean, the U.S. has lost World Cups as well. They've lost a few. They lost to Japan. They lost in the 2000s where Germany won 2 in a row. So I think the gap is narrowing, but, the U.S. still is that top team. And, you're not going to see some of these players in 2023, wherever that World Cup will be. That's still to be determined. But they have a good system, nationally with the Women's League and the programs, and a very good development squad with Team USA. So this Team USA squad's not going away, but I think the gap is narrowing a bit. England, the Netherlands had a great tournament. France has a good team. So all these teams are going to be back. And again, U.S. will be the favorites in 2023, but you can't just give them the championship. They'll have to earn it just like they did here this past month.
Constantinople 2023. How about that for a World Cup location?
Well, I don't know if that would fly well in Turkey since it's Istanbul, but you have to go down there and ask. Maybe Ankara would be a better site for 2023. They have a big stadium and team there, so we'll just have to see. I'm hoping for the North-South Korea joint venture in 2023 together. I think that'd be very interesting.
Yeah, well, I don't know that that's probably possible, but we'll see what happens. Scott Nason, you and the rest of your crew have some big news. Are we ready to share the big news?
Well, if I can share it, because we shared it on my show Monday, we have moved our show to an ESPN station, Paul, so I guess we're kind of cousins in that realm. We're going to be moving to ESPN 1400 here locally in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and we're looking forward to that. The full 2-hour show will be on the radio, along with possibly one of our other Canadian shows. So it was a decision that we all thought was a good one, and we're moving forward, and glad to be part of the ESPN family, as I guess we're cousins now.
Wow.
Congratulations, Scott. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, the good news is
We're
that
related, Paul.
at the family reunion, you can still make out with Andrew, so it'll be all good.
Fantastic.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right, Scott Nason, as always, we appreciate you. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. You have a wonderful weekend, my friend.
Paul, I appreciate it. One final thing, Cricket World Cup final Sunday, England, New Zealand, baby. It's going to be an awesome one.
In related news, nobody cares. Scott Nason, have a great one. We'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, you bet. We'll be right back. It's The Drive.
ESPN Blacksburg, 93.1, 97.1, and online at espnblacksburg.com.